Hello and welcome to this episode of Carmen's Coaching Corner. And as you can see, I have a lovely guest with me today. Her name is Diane Pruitt. Welcome, Diane.
Oh, thank you, Carmen. It's great to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. I say this to all my guests, but I'm genuinely happy that all my guests are on my coaching corner. But I love you so much because do you mind if I share how we actually met?
Oh, that'd be great.
When I was starting SOAR, and I had no clue about what my branding was going to look like, what my website was going to look like. In fact, I designed my own website and it looked like a 3-year-old had built it. Diane knows this, right? And I basically cried out and said, I need help, I can't do this anymore on my own. And then through my person who does all my speaking engagement videos and all my professionally made SOAR videos, Taylor recommended Diane to me. And so Diane and I met. Fortunately, she lives really locally to me. And that's where our love began. Our romance began. So if you've never been to my website, SOARTLC.com, go check it out because Diane was very instrumental in the whole thing. She created the whole website for me and basically took me away from my 3-year-old version to much more professionally updated version of my website.
You're so hard on yourself.
Terrible. If you're ever thinking of building a website, you don't have a clue how to do it, get a professional to help you. And if you need, I don't know whether you still do that these days.
You still do that. Especially for small businesses, sure. Yeah.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today, because Diane has moved on since those days. And now you're doing something a little bit different, and very much in my wheelhouse too, and I love it.
Yeah.
So, Diane, just share with me what you're doing so my viewers understand a little bit about who you are and what you're doing these days.
Well,
how you help people.
How I help people, yes. Well, this has all started a long time ago, obviously. I am sort of reinventing myself. I do that probably every 15 or 20 years. But definitely in that place now. And I actually am working in the energy business, which syncs up with where I started when I graduated from college. So my background is really in urban and environmental studies. I just got into a job that allows me to practice what I learned I'm not going to say how long ago, but quite a while ago. Actually, I'm enjoying it.
Well, that's because you've gone back to your passion and your true calling.
Exactly. I've always been interested in the environment and sustainability. So this sort of maps really well with that. But it actually turned out to be even better than I imagined because the company, a global company, is also very attuned to things like well-being and wellness in the workplace. So
this is the organization you're currently working for.
That's the organization I'm currently working for. And as you know, I've been sort of struggling with my business concept. I know I like that creative aspect of designing websites and visually creating something. And if it can be a website or it can be an interior design. So I've always wanted to hold on to that and haven't been able to figure out how to do that and weave that into a more acceptable professional career, right?
Yeah, because if you walk into a corporation and go, I do energy, I deal with energy, it's kind of like, what?
Exactly.
And they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Right? And we know, those of us who, and there's so many people who are now waking up to the idea and really becoming more comfortable with saying everything is energy.
Yeah.
Right? Just like Einstein said, right? Everything is energy. So I love the fact that you're working for a global organization.
That's energy.
And you're actually doing stuff in that arena.
Yeah, and so what's happening is it's funny that you said that because I just realized there's a juxtaposition there. I'm actually working in the energy business that helps us keep our lights on, right? And is all about microgrid technology and utilities and all of that. But it's all about energy.
Yes.
So the company also supports helping employees be more energetic in their workplace and more productive. And they actually support mindfulness.
Which is the space you work in now.
That's what I'm working in now. I'm an energy analyst conducting mindfulness classes, right? Who knew? And so what's been so fascinating about it is just sort of, it's so easy to weave it in.
Right.
Never thought that would happen. The energy piece is a corporate piece and is almost diametrically opposed to mindfulness and well-being, but thankfully the organization, the company that I work for, is so committed to merging the two. That sort of like Google.
Right.
Google, very technical, it's an IT company, but they have the largest mindfulness program.
Really? I had
Yes,
no
in
idea.
the country. As a matter of fact, they have led the way in introducing mindfulness into the workplace.
Yeah, you're right. I think I did read something around Google. I mean, Google's one of the most coveted places to work at.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because of that very fact. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
So, so off camera, Diane was sharing with me that you do mindfulness Mondays and you talk about what exactly?
Leadership.
Yes, but what did you call it?
I called it compassionate leadership.
Yeah.
Compassionate leadership, because frankly, when I came into the organization, one of the things that I noticed right away were leaders who had distanced themselves from the people from their followers, so to speak.
Right.
That reporting to them. Yeah, I mean, and those people are the ones who we're depending on in terms of productivity and revenue generation. And then there's this disconnect between management and this group. Another component of that is that they're millennials, and the management is not. They're the baby boomers, and so you have this generational disconnect,
which creates issues in terms of communication,
exactly,
and all that kind of stuff,
and collaboration.
Right.
You have the millennials looking to be more collaborative, wanting to contribute more, actually valuing the job because they can do that. And if they're not getting it, then you begin to see this divide and this gulf that happens. That's what I walked into.
Wow. So what did you do?
I said, I think that it is incumbent upon management to understand how important it is to engage and involve the people who are actually doing the work. They are young, they all have sustainability degrees, and we need to try to tap into that. My other feeling
I think I just fell in love with Diane. Just saying.
But the other piece of that was, okay, I know how this is supposed to work. I've done it so long. Diane, why don't you? It's almost like I feel it's my responsibility to show them, the millennials, the younger generation, that you don't have to be a manager to be a leader.
Exactly.
And exactly. And so
we're all leaders. Right?
We're all leaders. But then you need to consider taking it to another level. Consider not just being a leader, but being a compassionate, one who has empathy, one who can be authentic, one who can listen and extract information and bring the best out of people. So that's what my Mindful Mondays is about. It's about compassionate leadership.
Preaching to the choir. Yeah, seriously, you're preaching to the choir, because and I shared this with you, that, you know, one of my talks that I do is leading with your heart.
Yes.
And it's basically the same, very similar concept. And that's why I love having enough conversations, because we're so aligned in our thinking, and I just absolutely love that. And, you know, during that, when I go in and I do workshops myself at corporations, it's just, you know, I bring up the same subjects: compassion, empathy, right? All these things that as a leader can be seen as weaknesses.
Yes.
And being too vulnerable, because then you get the mindset that, well, if I'm compassionate and empathetic, they're going to walk all over me, right? And I'm never going to get them to do anything, right? How am I going to have a productive team when I'm being a compassionate leader, right? Or an empathetic leader? How does that work? And it really is that juxtaposition, right? Of how can I be a leader? And it's usually one, they have a certain perspective around what that looks like, right? It's basically what you've experienced in where you are, right? Where you have this arm's length kind of leadership happening instead of this collaboration thing happening.
It's very important,
right?
Yeah.
So I love, so you basically work with teams and leadership to help understand this compassionate leadership aspect. What changes have you seen, or have you, what have you witnessed as a result of you coming in and teaching this stuff?
What a wonderful segue. This is why we do so well together.
That wasn't even rehearsed.
I know, that's amazing. I just had my review.
Okay.
First year formal review. Some of that review included, you know, feedback from my peers, the people who were actually attending the classes or sessions that we're having. I never expected anyone to include in my review the mindfulness session. Because I just sort of like, you know, mindfulness kind of like stretching is a nice thing to do every day. But every person in my review talked about how significant the mindfulness sessions were and how it was helping them focus better, respond differently to certain situations, and even inspiring each other.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing. I just had I know, right? I had no idea.
There should be one of you in every organization, seriously, because, you know, I go in, and this is what a lot of corporations don't get. It's not a one and done thing, right?
Exactly.
They're so blessed to have you because you're doing it every week, right? And that consistent session, mindfulness Monday, is it what, an hour and a half? How long is it?
20 minutes.
It's 20 minutes.
20
oh my God.
minutes.
Right?
Yes.
So you're having a 20-minute mindfulness session on a Monday. What time of the day is it usually?
9 o'clock Monday morning.
So first thing Monday morning. How wonderful is it if you know on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock that's what you have to look forward to? Clearly they look forward to it if that's the feedback you've got in your reviews. And you know, most of us think of getting up. Well, when I was working with my corporate job, I used to have that sick feeling in my tummy on a Sunday afternoon, right? So that time of the day would come out, and it'd be just like, oh God, now I've got to start thinking about everything I've got going on that week, right? Who am I going to be speaking to, right? And the old comment was like, okay, which idiots have I got to speak to, right? Because I wasn't being compassionate. I was being extremely judgmental and causing myself more stress. Right?
Exactly.
And then wondering why, you know, when I got to work on Monday, I was already pissed off before I even walked through the door, right? Because I'm stressed already about everything I've got to do and all the projects that I had in my plate on, because I was a project manager, an IT project manager. If any of you are IT project managers out there, you know, you can feel my pain, I'm sure, right? So when I started learning a few years ago all these more mindful ways of being, right, things completely changed. And I would have loved it if back then somebody was running a mindfulness session on a Monday morning, because I know how beneficial it is. You know, hindsight is 20/20, right?
Exactly.
I know how beneficial it is, and I've shared with you that one of the things I started doing before I left my corporate job, because one of the things that came up on the annual employee opinion survey was everybody was stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And
right. Yes.
And
all the time.
Toxic environment. People
Yes.
are really and I know it's not just where I was working. This is common in many different settings, organizational settings. Although companies, I have to say, are getting better now at trying to incorporate mindfulness and well-being into the workplace. But saying is one thing, doing is another, right?
It is. And what we do in 20 minutes it isn't a lot of time. But what happens in mindfulness classes, well, in this session in particular, there are people who started who don't know anything about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know anything about how to relax the mind and how to keep it from generating more thoughts.
Right.
So we did spend probably the first 3 sessions just on that, on breathing and understanding the significance of breath, but also knowing that the mind, it's the job of the mind is to keep moving and keep going. I mean, it's not supposed
to.
Yeah, it's not supposed to shut down. And the whole purpose of mindfulness, and at least from a compassionate standpoint, is that you have to be also compassionate about how the mind works. Let it do its thing, but also teach it how to empty and calm. So we talk about those kinds of things. It's not just meditation. It is about understanding why we're doing it, the value of doing it, and then what you pull out of that experience that you can apply to your next task. Is the way we focus on it. And it's been awesome. I have a gong. Of course you do. So we work from our I have literature every week just to make sure that everybody's engaged early on. As soon as they sit down, I'll pass out a sheet of paper and it'll have some information on mindfulness or something that we want to talk about for 5 or 10 minutes, but I ask each person to read a paragraph so that they automatically drop into that, and don't bring any of
the monkey mind
stuff. Exactly. And then once we have a brief discussion about that, bring that gong, boom, and we're into mindfulness, which is great. Yeah.
Which is awesome. And that's what I was just about, going to share, is that I would do meditation Wednesdays. It was 30 minutes during the lunch, just around lunchtime, where people would just come into one of the conference rooms, or the only conference room we actually had in the building I was in. And, we'd get everybody situated, and we would just do a 15-minute, roughly, meditation. And then I would go around the room and just ask how everybody's doing. How is everybody checking, basically? And it's something like that. Mindfulness, when you practice it, it stays with you for hours afterwards. And that's what's key, and what people don't really always get is that when you do the mindfulness practice, and it is a practice. We were just saying, like, some days are better than others, right?
Exactly. All day.
Right, and you can't expect the same experience every time you meditate, right? Or do something in terms of mindfulness, because it really depends on your energy level, what else you've got going on. You're a human being, right? So when you do it, don't have any judgment, right? It's just about letting it go, releasing it, and just doing the best you can at that time, and just taking as much as you can from it in that moment, right?
And the way that resonates out in everything you do is amazing. So we were just talking about how challenging it can be in the work environment with people, and you have to remind yourself, okay, I'm teaching this stuff. It's time to practice it. But that one session that I was telling you about, when we were talking about how people judge, we all judge. We actually, we had our meditation was on learning how to allow a thing to come we can judge it,
Mm-hmm.
but we also need to put it in its proper perspective and look at it objectively as opposed to emotionally. That takes practice, which is why we continue to do the mindfulness. So the first, we talked that most popular infographic is the one where it shows stimulus response or stimulus mindfulness response. And in that mindful space, you're actually developing a space from which you can drop into, assess the situation, and then respond. And so that's what we talk about, and how to practice that more every day as you move through the day. And I did tell them, I will share with you, as soon as you finish this meditation on how not to be judgmental, somebody out there is going to test how well you have practiced. Right?
Right.
So your first response is going to be knee-jerk, right? No, your first response is going to be, you're going to count to a zillion, and then you will respond. So,
yeah, and I call it like react versus responding.
Exactly.
Right. And when you're reacting, there's no thought in terms of, you haven't put any thought or analysis into the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth or the next thing you think, right? Whereas if you're doing the mindfulness aspects of just being very self-aware of what thoughts are you having in this moment that are not true, right? Exactly. Or out of perspective.
Yes.
And not very compassionate.
And will change.
And will change. Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't
right?
have permanence, thank goodness.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
And then how can you then respond to that trigger, right? So is there one thing that the viewers of this video can practice that's really like a simple process that they can practice in mindfulness?
My favorite thing to recommend, and I do this periodically, almost every time we settle into the meditation, is that when the mind wanders, and it will, that's its job, we just simply, you tell the mind, okay, I hear, bottom line, I hear you want to speak. How about we just put that to the side right now. Right now, I'm just going to focus on the breath. And I'm going to say to myself, this is my in-breath as I inhale. And this is my out-breath as I exhale. And I repeat that.
So you're saying that in your mind.
You're saying my in-breath, this is my out-breath. I will return to those thoughts after I've had this session with my breath. And you continue to do that. That's been probably the most effective for me. Whenever I am even sitting in a meeting sometimes and someone says something absolutely, we won't go on to how ridiculous it is, but when it is a challenge to not want to say something, I just sit there and say, my
mm-hmm.
And I'm not.
And then that judgment about how ridiculous that person's thought is actually gets in a different perspective.
It takes it someplace completely different, and you say to yourself, and one of the things that I tend to say to myself is, okay, I don't really have to be in this moment this way. I want to be in this moment this way.
You get to choose, and I love that because we forget that we have a choice, right? Any moment of any given day, you get to choose how you're feeling or thinking about something, and we can tend to forget that sometimes because we're so in reactionary mode. We're going from one thing to the next, and we're forgetting to breathe. And one of the things I love about that practice of this is my in breath, this is my out breath, and any thoughts that come out, you push them to the side. If you can visualize a chalkboard or a flip chart or even putting that thought in a balloon and allowing it to float away, just put, in all these means. We have in the US it's a parking lot, but in the UK it's the car park. We'll put this on the car park, right? So we basically have a piece of flip chart paper where we don't want to talk about it right now, but we're going to make a note of it. And write it on and that's the car park, right? I remember saying that the first time when I moved down to the US, and I'm like, what? And I went, you know, the car park. They were like, looked at me as if I had two heads. And I'm like, we are speaking the same language, right? But it was a parking lot here, and I had to flip my language. So, anyways, that's, you know, one of the things. So I had judgment around that. I'm like, what the hell? What's a parking lot? Right? So I had judgment around the use of that, right?
Yeah.
So I had to come from, okay, I need to speak the language they're going to understand, because they're having a hard enough time understanding my accent half the time. So anyway, things you learn, right? So I love that. Thank you for sharing that practice.
Yeah.
And we could talk for hours. Yeah, we could. This is a dangerous person having a coaching corner. But maybe I'll have another time and we can continue this discussion.
That's great. I love it.
Because I know there's other things that you do to help really embody the whole mindfulness thing. Because you create spaces as well.
Yeah.
To help employees feel very calm and relaxed, and just really help to trigger mindful, peaceful thoughts.
We are working on our mindfulness room right now in the office.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, and every company should have a mindfulness room.
And use it.
And actually use it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have these. It was the same thing at the place I used to work at. In one of the buildings I was located, and I worked for the company for a long time. So one of the buildings we were in, they had this quiet room.
Yeah.
And you'd be lucky if you ever saw anybody in there.
Exactly.
You know, and this goes back to it. You are responsible for your own well-being, and if you're not taking the time to practice well-being, and you're just complaining about how stressed out you are and that you don't have time to think and you're reacting to everything, and this is basically your modus operandi, your MO. Don't complain about that. Do something about it, right? Take the time, because you're going to get burnout and overwhelmed and
very quickly.
Very quickly. And basically, stress is a number one cause of lots of dis-ease in the body, right? And so you're responsible for your own well-being. So if they provide something like that in the place that you work, make use of it. I can't stress that enough. I wish I took my own advice like 20 years ago, right? But you know, you live and learn, and I did get sick through stress and all kinds of things like that. And the only person that was suffering was me, right? So don't make the same mistakes I used to make, right? Which is why we do what we do now, right? Because we see it's an issue. Anyway, I loved having you. I don't really want the conversation to end. I love you so much, Diane. And thank you for being, and I love what you're doing and the impact that you're making where you are. So how many employees are you impacting?
The office is a small office, 20 plus 22. 7 of them attend regularly.
That's great.
It is.
That's almost half the workforce.
Almost half the workforce. They're all, most of them are millennials, and a couple of them are baby boomers. So the diversity is really nice.
That's nice.
Bringing different perspectives. So, really excited about that.
That's huge, and that really is huge. So we just need to duplicate Diane everywhere.
Thank
you. We can be a dynamic duo.
That's just the way,
Go do what we do, right? So thank you again, Diane, and thank you for sharing that story. And love and light, as always, to your transformation and growth, Carmen.
To get started, please call or email me or schedule an appointment on my website.